Welcome to Language Track for Teachers. My name is Carmen, and I've been teaching for over 10 years now. I also learned to read and write English at the age of 13. I had been speaking my whole entire life, so I do have a background as a English as a second language to a degree. And this series or this podcast is going to be about getting started with your English classes. You might be a working professional, you might be just someone to help in your community. And so we're going to go over some acronyms to start us off. I got started with ESL, English as a second language, when I left college. I decided to go to South Korea with my friend Heidi. And we went there and taught English as a foreign language to little kids. And then at night, we'd also go to like a language cafe. And we got to help young adults that had been studying English for probably most of their life. And we had a great time. But when I came back to the States, I really wanted to help our immigrant communities here in the U.S. because let's face it, when you're in the United States and you don't know English, life and work can be very hard. I reached out to my local church and I was like, hey, you guys have an ESL program? They're like, yes and no. And I was like, what happened? And they basically said that we did have a program, but we didn't have a director. And so it was kind of put on hold over the summer. And they decided to just pause it. And since I stepped in, they're like, hey, do you want to be the director? And I was like, sure, I'll help out and see what we can do. As I started to pull my manual out, because I did some previous training before going to Korea, and I realized how little I know about ESL as, I guess, an industry in a way here in the United States. If I would have known some of these acronyms, it would have been a little bit easier talking to professionals and make it sound like I know what I'm talking about, even though you don't need to know these. These are just what a lot of teachers and educational people like to use as they talk about this growing field of study that we desperately need in this country. ESL is basically, it means English as a second language, and it's falling out of favor, actually. A lot of programs have been labeled as ESL, and now they're like, no, that is politically incorrect. And you're like, well, what should we use? And many of them are starting to say, like, well, we need to do ELL, and that's English Language Learner. And then if you're teaching it, it's going to be ELT, English Language Teaching. And if you're just like, okay, we're just going to say that they're just an English learner, then it's EL. When I taught in Korea, we were labeled as EFL, which is English as a foreign language, because it's not the main language in that country. It was Korean. And so that's what we would labeled everything. ESL is kind of falling out of favor, mostly because we're starting to see a big group of just different types of immigrants coming to the United States. And if you ask some people from Mexico or from Guatemala, how many languages do they know? And a few of them will say, well, actually, Spanish is my second language. And you're like, what? And they have probably a native or an indigenous language that they learned first in their little village. And then later on, when they wanted to go to the big city, they had to learn Spanish. This is where we're starting to realize, oh, more and more people are coming to the United States, probably on their second or third language already. This is kind of where ESL is falling out of favor. Now, you do have ESOL, which is English to speakers of other languages. And again, we're just trying to label and encompass the differences with all of this. Another one that you may not see a lot, but maybe in curriculum, it's going to be ELD, which is English Language Development. ELL is going to be the one that you can start telling people about instead of ESL, but ESL still works. Now, if you have some students that are going into a university level, they're probably going to be taking a test called the TOEFL. And it's TOEFL. And my dad was even trying to encourage me to take this, even though I had been in the States since 8th grade. And I was like, well, I know English now. My dad's like, you learned mostly Spanish growing up. Like, maybe you should take this test and show that you're competent in speaking and reading and writing now in English. And I was like, maybe, but it's a test of English as a foreign language. Many universities want to see where you stand on that. And if you do pretty well, then there's a score system. Then you don't have to take English as a second language course, okay? That's can be really helpful, and that's something that could be a part of your outreach, TOEFL. And then those who need to get certified, like teachers, which I'm still looking at getting into, is called TESOL. So that's TESOL, which is teaching English as a second language or teaching English to speakers of a second language. That's kind of become almost like a requirement going overseas. Luckily in Korea, and it may have changed by now, but we just had to have a bachelor's because they just wanted people that had some type of education. It didn't matter what it was, as long as you could show, hey, I have worked with students or with children, and we get along well, and we have a great time, and I also have a bachelor's. Now, if you're looking for other acronyms, some are ESL, which is Second Language Learner. It kind of falls with the ESL in a bit. And if you're looking at some reports, you may see LEP, which is Limited English Proficient, and LES, which is Limited English Speaking or Speaker. You may see that on some reports, and that kind of guide you to how to help your students a little bit more. And then, of course, there's also NEP, Non-English Proficient, NES, Non-English Speaking Speaker, NEST, Native English Speaking Teacher, which would be you, and NNES, which is Non-Native English Speaker. In Korea, we were paired up with a Korean teacher, so they spoke English too, but they kind of acted as if there was behavior problems or helping the students understand if they were just like wholly incapable of speaking in English. They were there for them as a safety net. Now, because we had an immersion program, after about 4 or 5 months, not kidding, we had 5-year-olds just speaking English nonstop. It was great. And so this is something that I've tried to incorporate in adult classes. I have some great students that just love to just make comments in Spanish, make comments in Arabic or whatever to their partner. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I'm glad we're having great camaraderie, but do it in English. I don't care if you're talking while I'm talking. If it's in English, we're cool. But when you are switching your brain constantly, and translating is a great skill, but that's not the skill that we're trying to acquire here in a class. We're trying to instead just think in the language. Stop translating, stop flipping your language constantly. Because when you do that, you are not going to start thinking in that language. And some of them complain and say like, well, how do I think in the language? I'm like, stop translating. Just, you got to feel, I know this sounds very emotional, but you really need to feel the words, how they go with you, and what they evoke, what the meaning means to you in like a abstract way versus translating word for word. I hope this was helpful, going over some of the acronyms of education, alphabet soup, if you will. I know it's a lot. Basically, what you can do and say to your students and promoting your program is simply it's English classes. And if you want to say it's conversational English, that's fine. But you're really trying to tell them, hey, we're trying to focus on speaking versus the reading and writing. We will touch on those. Those can be homework. But in the classroom, your focus is to work on talking, working on pronunciation and American tone, cadence, stress, and all that. And that's kind of your focus when you see them on a week-to-week. I hope that's helpful, and check out more at languagetrack.com.